Hey everybody, welcome to this week's video. Today we're continuing along with the series of going over comic books, specifically Marvel comic books that came out 40 years ago this week. So this would be week 18 of the year. There's 52 weeks in a year, so you're going to have 52 weeks. So we're looking back at the Marvel comics that specifically came out in 1985, so 40 years ago. And again, if you've been watching my videos, the reason I'm doing these is because this is the time, 84 is when I first got into comic books full-time, reading and collecting, and going every week to get my comic books from the Rochester Book Center or Fireside Bookstore, local shops that no longer exist in my hometown of Rochester. But I did do this for myself back in 84. Went through and I was looking through and reading all the comics from 84 from the initial year. I started like in the summer, like school had just gotten out, and so we're gonna do this full year now, although I didn't start. I kind of had this idea late in the beginning of this year, like in February, March, or whenever it was. Was it March I started doing it, and I decided, hey, I'm going to do this, so I'm not going to go back and play catch up for the year. If I continue to do these next year and do 1986, then we'll get a full year of it, but for now I'm just going to do from that time period on for the rest of the year, as long as I stay interested in doing it. Again, put a pin in that, as long as I stay interested in doing that. And I've been talking about this in each video, and we'll get more on it in this one, but again, we're going back to week 18. This would be the first. I'm recording this a week early, by the way, so technically I just posted today. We're week 17, and then I usually post and then record a new one for the next week, so I have one in the chamber, to go. So this would be week 18, the first week of May. So we're already into May. Just the year just started and we're already almost halfway over. But anyways, although winter's over, and being here in Michigan, I'm glad winter's over. So the weather's not perfect yet, but it's starting to warm up. Anyways, so again, I started out trying, and trust me, I tried to read every comic book that came out in a given week. I couldn't do it. So then I started focusing on, I started ditching stuff like the Epic titles and ditching I never started reading the Star brands, which was more like the kids brand, and then Epic was more like the adult sophisticated brand. So I'm going for like the straight across the board Marvel universe, as with superhero universe, and then to some extent the extended universe with Conan, which arguably is part of the regular Marvel universe. But again, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, and again, they've crossed paths even with the superheroes, so do they all exist in the same universe? Who knows? But those make sense. And then trying to do Star Wars, but this is towards the end of the Star Wars run. It's 1985. Star Wars has kind of ran its course. They're on the third series of action figures for Jedi, which is the Power of the Force, where they started doing some of the oddball characters. And so the action figure line is dying. It's been 2 years since Jedi was in the theater. They had the Droids cartoon, which is, of course, part of the Star imprint of this. And then the Ewoks, it wasn't doing it. So Star Wars, after this year, after 1985, is effectively dead. Funny, fast forward 40 years, 2005. I know the Andor, I think, posted today, the first episode. But effectively Star Wars today, 40 years ago, in 2025, is almost dead. We'll be surprised if it makes it into 2026. I'll be very surprised, but if it doesn't, history is repeating itself again. We're right back to where we were back in 2006. But let's stay on task. Let's look at the Marvel comics here. So I'm going to switch us over to the page I usually go to, and again, if you're not familiar with this page, it's a fandom page. It's a fandom wiki page. They have them for lots of things. including DC Comics, which I was going to do a DC for this month, and I don't know if I can continue. The DC Comics are just not that good at this time. 86 is when things started to pick up after post-crisis. I gotta say, I really didn't like I was a Marvel guy from the beginning, and even though I liked Super Friends and Mego Dolls in the 70s and all that stuff, I loved Batman, really when it came to comic books, I was a Marvel guy. And so I don't know if maybe, I don't know. If I feel like it, I tried to do it the other night. I was going like, I got some time, let me put together this, and I couldn't do it. So we're going to stay specifically with Marvel, and again, we're gonna, as you can see, Black Dragon there, number 2. We're gonna avoid Epic, and we are going to, well, obviously we're not going to do the UK stuff because that never came out over here. But we're also going to avoid the Star Imprint brands like the Heathcliff. Although I love the cartoon Heathcliff, and I probably would enjoy this comic, especially as the Cadillac. I don't know if these have the Cadillac cats in it, but I like the Cadillac cats better than the actual Heathcliff. But I don't know. I'll have to look into. I'll look into the Heathcliff comics, the Star Imprints. But normally I'm not going to do Star Imprints. I was going to stick with like Gru. I tried going into this Gru, just popped my head in and started looking at this Gru comic, and I was just like, I don't really know if I liked it sort of at this time. I had a friend that I met when I moved up to the trailer park, moved up in the world to the trailer park. 1987, I met a kid in the trailer park, one of the first kids I met in there, who was a couple years younger than me, and he really liked Gru. Whenever I see Gru, I think of that kid. And I kind of got into it, but I really didn't get super into it. I mean, I think the artwork's great. I think Sergio Aragonés is brilliant. I think it was very funny. For some reason, I just can't get into it. So we're not gonna do that. I also was going to, like I said, you're noticing a trend here. I also was going to do Savage Sword of Conan, but I can barely make it through some of these comic books, and I guess I'm just going to stick with like the regular Conan series comic, because it was done by what's his face, John Buscema at the time, so I really liked it. But other than that, I think I don't know if I can keep going on that one as well. Just as another caveat here, I'm kind of doing this out of sequence here, but as Micronauts, I still have it in my folder to read, and I might go back and start reading it. I don't know, the Micronauts was really boring me during the New Adventures, or the New Voyages. I really liked it as a kid, and it's funny, Micronauts, like Transformers, well, not Transformers specifically, but the Star Wars comic, Micronauts, and then, of course, G.I. Joe in 1982 were comic books that I got on a regular basis pre-getting into the Marvel Universe. So, like I said, I was collecting Star Wars comics since it came out in the 70s. I also was collecting Micronauts and Shogun Warriors, stuff like that, ROM, since the 70s. And then when G.I. Joe came out in 1982, I bought the first issue right off the spinner rack. That was a spinner rack at the time. It was a place we didn't normally go to, but we were at Meadowbrook Mall, and my dad's like, of course my dad needed to get his booze, so you want to go down to the party shop at the corner, like a party shop drugstore, and they had a spinner rack, and I forgot about it was coming out. I had friends were talking about it. I was like, oh, G.I. Joe #1. Oh, gotta grab that. But I never really got comics from that drugstore much. It was kind of... I've got a million different things I could talk about little nuances of things that were happening. But again, we're trying to keep this under an hour, so let's try to stay on point. Anyways, let's get into the comics here. That's probably the easiest way. So we've got, and again, at the end I will give you what I actually picked up off the shelf at the time. And then, of course, the bulk of this, we're going to go into a few of these, because I did read more than one this week, trust me. I did read more than one. So we'll go into that as well. We've got Alpha Flight number 25. This is still being done by Byrne at the time. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 267. I've got words about this when we get to it. I skipped Black Dragon. I did read Captain America, and I'll tell you why. Doctor Strange, I've never been a fan of Doctor Strange, so this one, I didn't even, it's not on my radar at all. I always thought he looked kind of cool with the cape and stuff and the primary colors, but other than that, I just could never get into Doctor Strange. Never appealed to me whatsoever. Again, we're going to skip the star imprints. Left a scar on me, the star imprints. Micronauts, I'm also going to skip. Power Pack, I'm going to skip because, like I said, having a comic book about kids who were younger than me when I was young, and imagine being a teenager and having to read comics about kids that are like 3 or 4 years younger than you. And I wasn't even a teenager at this time. I was like a tween. Again, my birthday wasn't until July, so I turned 12 in July of 1985. So I was still 11, and I was still currently in 6th grade. Again, yes, my 6th grade was in our elementary school. So I didn't want to read a comic about a bunch of 2nd and 3rd graders. You know what I mean? I think some of the kids were. I think the older brother was like maybe a year younger than me, but I didn't like that. I liked comics about adults because you looked at it's like I see Wolverine, he was very he's old at the time, but like Captain America, even Spider-Man, as young as they try to portray him, and at this time Spider-Man was not that young. He was in his 20s. He was somebody to look up to. He was an older person, so. That's how, I couldn't read comic books about kids, Again, Savage Sword of Conan, I'm just going to skip it from now. This is not issue number 114, came out this month. Gru the Wanderer number 6, this is when they did the Marvel/Epic imprint weird thing. I didn't understand exactly why they did that, but Sisterhood of Steel, we're going to skip. That is a boring comic. I got to say, I tried to read issue number 1. This is issue number 4, of course. Oh, it's so boring. Again, we're going to skip the UK stuff, which although I did notice they've got the Spider-Man and his amazing friends on the cover, which is kind of cool. We're going to skip that. And as you see, there's a Transformer UK down there. We're going to skip that because we're not in the UK, so it didn't come out back then. So those of you watching this who are from the UK, if you are, I apologize, but, you could chime in. Tell me if you knew about, if you're roughly my age and you were picking this stuff up. Because I'm just curious I would love to sit down and talk to like somebody from like, say, a lot of people from like Europe, like England, especially because they're English speaking, Europe, or England, Ireland, Scotland, and then I'd like to talk to people from like Spain, France, Germany, and just wonder, what was your experience in 1985 with comic books if you're roughly my age? I'm 52. So if you're roughly my age, sorry, I'll be 52 in July because it's 4 years later. But I'm just curious what your experiences were. I'm curious where you picked your stuff up, how you paid for them. Did you have jobs that you did? I'm just curious what that world was like overseas. It's still alien to me now, but it was even more alien to me back in 1985 when I was a kid. Because, the next state was alien to me at the time. Again, Top Dog is a star imprint. We're going to skip that. And then Wally, of course, is another star imprint. Skip. Wow, a lot of star imprints came out this week. So let's skip over to the actual comics that I put in the folder to read. And I did put Power Pack and Micronauts in there, but I didn't get around to them. I only read these 3 comics here. So I read Alpha Flight number 25. I read Spider-Man 267, and I read Captain America 308, and again, I'll tell you why. Although I think the Armadillo is one of those characters. I remember being Mr. Spitzer's class, drawing this character in, I think, 1986, with this other guy in the class, and we were both trying to see who could draw Armadillo better, right from just copying him from the Marvel universe. So whenever I see Armadillo, I think of that time at school when we were doing that. And He was like a ninth. I was like an eighth grader. He was a ninth grader at the time. Oh no, I wasn't even eighth grade. I was still in the second semester, seventh grade. So anyways, let's get into. I might have this set up. I'm gonna set this back to single page. I had it set up for sec, and then we'll go full screen. Okay, so here we go. Alpha Flight. I didn't read the last Alpha Flight. Remember, I tried to read it and I got bored. I kind of just. It was just too much. Two young men in this in the shaman with that one. So I tried to muscle through this one, and again, hint why I muscled through this one. But anyways, let's get into it here. So basically, they're accusing Northstar of just being a jerk, or being, I can't remember. They're charged about, what are they? You've been charged. How do you plead? I can't remember. They're charging him about, I think, just being a jerk to his sister or something. He did something, and he was kind of being deceitful about or whatever. And of course, I love Aurora in this costume with that hair and the eyes and stuff. I just always thought that looked so cool, and obviously attractive at the same time. And this is where Box started. You know, Box is starting to come about, and I really liked Box. I thought he looked really cool. But there's two young men in the background. But anyways, I did read this one, and this one wasn't a slog like the last one, which I couldn't get through. But again, they're kind of, you know, he's on trial, you know, amongst his peers. Heather Hudson's there, and then it's funny. Tell me about this, because I don't. Either this was in one of the Marvel superhero role-playing games in black and white, or it was in one of the Marvel universes. But that robot there specifically, with like the big guns on its back and stuff, and then that specific frame, I remember seeing that somewhere else. I'll have to look in the role-playing game books, because that would make sense if it was in, like, I think it was in the advanced set book, main book. I think when it's talking about tech, I think that might have been one of the illustrations that they included in black and white. Well, it's like a black and white with like a weird blue to it, but essentially black and white. But that top panel there really stands out. Even though I do not like the shaman of, and I don't like whatever his name is, Chief J Strongbow. I mean, I do love his daughter. Talisman. She's really attractive, and I like that. This even goes to the Danny Moonstar. Is that tone? I got it in my. It's a Doc Martin tone, but the tone they used for like the Native American skin tone was like it's you know, without being offensive, it was supposed to be a red skin. You know, it's supposed to be a little bit more reddish and pinkish in hue than say just a regular peach, or even a dark peach. But I really liked it. I think it looks very appealing, very striking. And when you put like the yellow on her, like the yellow in Danny Moonstar's costume, and then that dark hair with the blue as the highlight, it really stands out. It's really appealing looking, and it makes. I mean, Byrne's drawing her pretty sexy here to begin with, but that just adds to like the exotic, the lure to her. I like that a lot. So, you know, since draws are great, so I really like Talisman. And I noticed that she was in this comic a lot more, so I was like, oh, that's going to keep my interest. And as you can see, they're doing flashbacks to when Guardian, spoiler alert, it's happened a long time ago, but Guardian suit explodes in front of Heather, his wife at the time. I think they were married. So they're kind of talking back to that point, because he shows back up. Guardian just shows back up out of nowhere, and they're like, "What? What's going on here?" And then, of course, you know, he helps take down this bad guy here with the mecha suit. And then after the big fight, they kind of Talisman renders the suit kind of, you know, moot at that point, and he kind of comes down to his skivvies here, the guy. But then when Guardian shows back, I really like that pose and that drawing of her there. I think that looks nice. The way she's putting all her weight on the one leg, just kind of that contrapposto style. I like that. Really done well. But Heather's kind of like, well, what in the hell? What's going on here? How are you still alive? And then he gives her a big smoochola. He explains. And the explanation is just kind of like, really? Okay. I can't remember, like I said, I can't remember exactly where this is going, but I have an assumption that that's not really him, or this is just some kind of weird, like he actually is dead. Actually, he says he died and he came back to life, or I can't remember, it's been a couple of days since I read it. But he talks to her after he kisses her and she faints. But they do kind of a, he says like, right before, I guess like in a split second, he goes into this other dimension or whatever, right before the suit explodes. And then, I remember what happens. And then he's on this other world. Obviously it's near Jupiter, so he's always on a moon, one of Jupiter's moon, Ganymede. It's funny, I don't know if they knew about the time if Ganymede could support human life or not. I can't remember. Although I think he ends up wearing, he ends up wearing a suit. Then he finds these people. Ganymede, I think, was a water planet, I think, isn't it? And then these like aliens, these like water aliens, they bring him back to life and they fix him, quote unquote. And then they send him on this rocket ship, I guess, back to Earth. So I guess he didn't go to another dimension. He just kind of like went through like a comic book portal, where it just takes you wherever conveniently you need to go. But then he's kind of talking to her. She's like, why didn't you tell me? Why? And then he rips his costume. He's because I'm, he's more machine now than man, type of thing. He's not all there. He's more robot or whatever. And that's like the thing. And now this is the other thing. Is I loved that panel up there with Box. I always thought it was cool with Box with the red and yellow because it seemed very Colossus-esque. But I do like the blue, and the blue's more of what I'm accustomed to, is his blue like outfit with the metal on it. But I used to love Box as a kid. I mean, I didn't really like the costume or the guy concept, like the guy in the wheelchair and he's controlling the thing, but I really liked the look of him. Just like I like Colossus. I really liked that like white and blue, sky blue to make it look metallic, like chrome, with like the segmented lines, which is just like on Colossus, and then with like a red and that yellow belt area, and then kind of a weird kind of mask type face. I just thought Box looked so cool, and that image on top there, I remember seeing that in another place besides this comic book as well. Again, it might have been like the cat's paw. Let me look at this real quick. By the way, I don't have the advanced set, but I do have cat's paw. Marvel, the Marvel superheroes thing. I'm just going to thumb through it real quick and see if that image was in here. Because some of these images were made for the comic or for the book, and then some of them are it wasn't in the book. Obviously, you got the maps and then the cards and stuff. Box isn't even in Cat's Paw. Yeah, he wasn't even around yet. This is from '84. But I've seen that. Again, this must have been the advanced set maybe for the advanced set for Marvel superheroes. Maybe when they talk about the high-tech wonders, just like that other creature, which is in the same comic, by the way. But like I said, this is the time I really liked Alpha Flight, and it's hit or miss with the issues, though. But like I said, I liked Talisman, I liked Aurora in that costume with the legs. I thought Box looked really cool. That type of thing. Yeah, I mean, the art's great. It's John Byrne artwork, so it's always going to be pretty top-notch. But let's go back now to the Spider-Man issue. I said we're only going to talk about the 3 comics here. the first thing, obviously, you got the cover, and this makes sense why he's in the black costume there, but as soon as I cracked it open again, I was like, oh yeah, the black costume, good, he's going to be in the black costume for this, which is my favorite. And then, Johnny Storm shows up here, and he's just like, hey, it's like, is that the symbiote suit? And he talks about, this is when, so what's her face, Black Cat, Felicia Day. Now, what's her name? Felicia Hardy. She makes him this suit to kind of look like his. It's like not the symbiote. I think he's broken away at the symbiote at this time. Let's just look who does the art. Art is done by Bob McLeod. Art is great in this comic, I gotta say. Written by Peter David. It's just funny. These girls are on the rooftop there sunbathing topless. I thought that was a very nice little cheeky, risque little thing to throw in there. I like that. I like little things like that. But that costume is just, especially with Johnny Storm flying around with that red and that yellow, it's just so visually grabbing and just totally indicative of that time too. That's a great shot of them flying past the window there, and then you get the reaction of the the guy in the suit there with the hair and the secretary. I just think that looks really neat. And it's just funny how Spider-Man witnesses. So the whole premise of this comic, again, this is one of those like goofball, no villain in it really, dumb comic of the week kind of thing. But this one's got a little bit more of a twist, which I think is kind of fun. And again, I was drawn in by the black costume. Like, I love the silhouette of him swinging in, and the guy sees him out there. But the whole premise of this is he's overseeing this, what looks like a robbery. But if you look really closely, the guy's going through the safe of this, Mr. Fred's fashion design store. And then you get this woman there. So you think he's got this woman hostage. And then he's lighting his cigarette with it. So it's not even it's a cigarette lighter. It's not a real gun. That was always the gag back in the days. I got a gun. It's really a cigarette lighter. That type of thing. I don't know why I got to give it that voice, but I got to give it that voice. And then, so Spider-Man thinks it's a robbery going on. And of course he's got the woman there. And he realizes later, he's like, oh, she's a dummy. It's like, she's a mannequin. Like, all the women in the shop are mannequins because it's a clothing store or design store, whatever it is. And he was up to no good, but it wasn't like he wasn't holding anybody hostage, and it wasn't like this armed thing. I think he works for the store, or maybe, and he's like taking the money, like he had like I don't know. He was breaking the law, but on a very small level, to where Spider-Man thought it was a little bit different. But the funny thing about it is the cops think that he's the bad guy because he's got this black suit on, which makes sense why in the rest of the comic he decides, oh, I'm going to put on the, he goes back home and he ends up putting on the red suit so people recognize him, because he's got to go out he follows the guy. The guy gets away. The guy lives out in the suburbs out of town. His wife's got a nice rear end in that skirt there. Anyways, so he's gonna go chase him down. He puts on the red suit. Sorry, and I mean, the red suit looks great. So the artwork is really good in this comic. And then he's showing the passage of time. He's trying to get to the I can't remember. He's swinging around. I think the whole point is he gets to the train station, takes the train out of town. It does one of those things where he webs the dogs doesn't bark at him, and then he ends up. And then there's this kid out in the suburbs, in this neighborhood, and this kid's on his big wheel, and he sees Spider-Man. Spider-Man tries to go jump into it. He tries to swing away, and he can't because there's nothing to swing on. So he jumps in a tree. The tree ends up breaking. And then these other neighbors with this weird wife, and he's like the neighborhood watch, and he's like, oh, who are you supposed to be? You're not the real Spider-Man type of thing, blah, blah, blah. And Spider-Man doesn't come out to the burbs type of thing. And then he's on the school bus, he's hitching a ride everywhere, and then this bus driver's kind of like, hey, pay the fare, buddy, or get out of here. So he's just like, I really realize why I don't come out to the suburbs, which is, I think that's funny. As my friend pointed out, somebody thought this was clever back in the day. The garbage man likes him. That's Luke Cage. Apparently, is the only other black guy in the suburbs has got to be the garbage guy, and he's down with the streets, man. He likes his Spider-Man. I'm not very down with the streets. That's why I was saying down with the streets. Hip to their jive. Sorry, I was trying to do a Harold Ramis impression from Stripes. Yeah, man. Daddy-O. Or whatever. Anyways. So he puts his bug on. That's how he tracks the guy out there. He puts his bug on. And then the guy finds the bug. He smashes the bug. And then he kind of like, he takes off in his Volvo. His Volvo turbo wagon here. Which is very 1985. And I think the neighbor, our one friend, his dad had a Volvo. That's not the turbo wagon. That's just a regular Volvo. But he had a Volvo turbo wagon. Like an 85 or 84, right around that time. Anyways, he tries to stop him. He gets away again. He takes a cab. It's basically this chase thing. So there's some action. It's kind of funny. Like I said, the art's really good. Optimus Prime shows up apparently for some reason. And then Roscoe and Pico Train gets involved here. I'm being facetious, but yeah. Again. And then, this whole thing at the end, he stops the guy, they arrest him for whatever, he was doing something wrong, and the neighborhood watch is like, but look at the characterization, that middle panel. I love that. And I love how that bottom panel where he's sitting on the hood and then you got the white background, and then how it kind of and then the open panel like that with just the panel lines on the actual image part. I like that a lot. And then, mix that in with the the bump, the text for the talking about, pick up a copy of Secret Wars 2, blah blah blah. Secret Wars 2 is out at the time, but the characterization, that's cartooning like 101 right there. Is this little gag here with the facial expressions, these different types of characters. I mean, it's very Barney Fife, kind of very of that time, but I just like that. It seems very cool. And then, of course, you got this I bet you that's a hippie dad there with his hippie kid. He just looked, and that guy looks like the guy that should be driving the turbo wagon. He looks like my neighbor back in the day. Anyways, so Spider-Man issue, it's not the best. It's one of those issues that I don't like, but I think the art's good. It's got a clever twist to it. It's, it's got Black Spider-Man and Red Spider-Man, so if you like them both, you get both of them in it. So let's go to this guy here, the Captain America 308. So at the time, another hint towards the end, I was not reading Captain America at the time. I also noticed this. They took the Marvel little thing in the middle and they extended it out. That looks kind of cool. I like that. Paul Neary doing the art. So, of course, the art's going to be good. I really like Paul Neary's stuff. Mark Grunwald is fine for a writer, and this is a pretty decent team. I did not read this back in the day. I could, to get me to read an entire Captain America issue was hard to do. However, I wanted to read this, and I'm going to show you why as we go here. Basically, he goes to the West Coast of... So, I loved West Coast Avengers at the time when it came out. And it was going on at this time. But I liked... so, he goes to the West Coast Avengers mansion. And I think this... And I'm not 100%... Because they make light of it, and this is during Secret Wars 2. I think this is why he was taking the plane and he was flying coach. Remember, like in Secret Wars, the first comic, or Secret Wars 2, issue number 1, they're talking about, like, hey, why is Captain America? And then he gets, like, the premonition from Charles Xavier that the Beyonders, back. And so this is where he was going at the time. Actually, no, didn't he say he needed to go back? I can't remember. Or did they take him? I can't remember exactly where they take him, but I'm assuming this is right around the time period. And he ends up in California on the West Coast. And so he's kind of testing the West Coast Avengers security on the grounds here in their mansion, see how well it is. He's like, oh, hey, and there's what's her face, Mockingbird and Hawkeye. Again, once Mockingbird had her legs hanging out, I really liked her character. You can see a pattern with me. So here's Armadillo. Armadillo shows up. So Armadillo technically isn't a traditional bad guy. I guess he would be considered an anti-hero, because the only reason he turns himself, again, spoiler alert, turns himself into Armadillo is so he could save his wife, because this guy, promises he could fix his wife because she's got some incurable disease. I don't know if it's cancer or brain tumor or something. And then he wants him to go, I can't remember what he sends him out to do. Again, it's a few days since I read it. Sends him out with some kind of task to do, and he turns him into this Armadillo character. And then he kind of fights Cap, so he gets some action in it, and then he gets trapped, and then he kind of tells, Cap what's going on, and then Cap's kind of like, oh, is that the case? So supposedly the Major Blood is the guy who looks like Major Blood down there, who is the bad guy. Yeah, I can see why he'd want to save his wife. She's got some legs on her. She's got some dark hair. Anyways, so here we go. We've got... So this is where everything's kind of explained, and then that's what he was. He was trying to go back to get a sample from Goliath, because the West Coast Avengers have him on ice or whatever, have him in stasis. That's what I think he was doing. He's trying to getting like the DNA sample or something from Goliath that the guy wants. I think that's what it is. And then, what's your face? Bernie Rosenthal's back at his place, wondering where Captain's at. He's been out of town for days. I guess they just put that. I don't know why they would put that. I guess they put that in there, anyways. She thinks he's still in England, because I guess that's where he was coming from. Maybe, I can't remember. You gotta piece all the stuff together, and figure out what's going on. But so Captain America basically comes there and says, like, hey, look. Kind of thing, and and he kind of I can't remember if he strikes a deal or whatever, but there's the Beyond. So the Beyonder shows up, and Beyonder makes himself look like Captain America, which is kind of funny. So it's a little hint in there too, and then they talk about the whereabouts happens in X-Men 196, which should be coming up. I don't think that was the issue we watched or read. Was it last, where they're with the Morlocks? I think it's the next issue. This is why I liked it. Again, here goes my ladies again, as I love the Serpent Society. I'm like Asp, and what's her face, Anaconda. Like I said, ever since I saw these characters in the Marvel Universe, again, I didn't know they were in this comic at that time, because I wasn't collecting this comic. But I did start noticing those characters in the Marvel Universe as it was coming out towards the end of this year, back in '85. And, of course, the issue #1 had Anaconda, and I think Asp was in it. This is Black Mamba. Asp was in it. But I really liked the girls. I was like, oh, I really like their look. I like the way they're very attractive. I like the whole snake motif. And then I started reading, they're part of this thing called the Serpent Society. And then it might have said like a Captain America issue or whatever, an Avengers issue where they first appeared. But reading this or seeing this comic, it's like, they're going to start showing up at the end of this. So that's the whole reason I read this comic, was just so I can get the full story of how the Serpent Society shows up in the comic. I know it's a goofy reason, but that's the type of stuff that I do. Anyways, so she's a thick girl, that Anaconda. Anyways, those are the 3 comics I read for this week, of the comics that came out in this is week, what did I say, this was week 18 or week 17? Week 18, right? Yeah, week 18 of 1985. So, of course, obviously, week 19, I'll do that next one. So when I post this one next week, on week 18, I'll be recording week 19. So I have to go back and see what comics are in there and have to pull those out and read them. So let's go ahead and let's guess. Pause it now and guess, or pause it after I say this. But which comics do you think that I bought this week when I came to the store? All right. So after you've paused it and you've made your choice, this is what it is. Alpha Flight. Yes. I definitely bought this one off the shelf. Not the spinner rack, because I got this from Rochester Book Center, which did not have a spinner rack. But as soon as I saw the cover, and I think I flipped through it, and I think I saw like Talisman and her legs, and I saw Aurora and her legs, and I saw Box. It just like when I flipped through it to read it again, that's what appealed to me, so that's why I picked it up. Amazing Spider-Man, yes. I don't think I ever read it, though. I picked this comic up, and I think I looked at it, and I think I was just like, oh, and I stuck it in the shoebox or whatever, and I might have flipped through it, but I didn't see anything like happening, so it didn't really register in my head at the time, so I don't remember actually reading this comic back in the day, but I did pick it up. And then, of course, Black Dragon, no. Captain America, no, I didn't pick it up. As I said before, I didn't read it at the time. I wasn't picking up Cap on a regular basis. Doctor Strange, no. Heathcliff, no. Micronauts, I still had a subscription at this time, so yes, I didn't pick this up off the shelf per se, but I did have it. Power Pack, no. Savage Sword and Conan I did not have. Gru number 6, I probably had, but I don't think I got it when it came out. I think I got it after the fact, once a couple years later when I met that kid who really got into Gru. I think I started to go back and was finding, wherever I see a Gru comic, it was cover price, I would just grab it. And I think I had like the first 12 or 13 or whatever of the Gru comics. Sister Shield, no. Obviously the UK ones, and of course the Star Imprints, no. So the only ones that I really bought this week would have been Alpha Flight and Amazing Spider-Man, and then I got Micronauts in a subscription. So that's, if you guessed that, then you were right. And if you remembered that I had a subscription to Micronauts, then that's right as well. So there's no reward for knowing. It's just a fun little thing, I guess, quote unquote fun little thing that you can do while watching these videos to make them more appealing, more exciting. All 25 people who watch it. So we're going to do the second week next week for May, week 19. Again, I'll in closing, put that back up. In closing, we're running into the same situation. Like I said this in the last couple of videos, and I'm going to keep saying it because it keeps ringing more and more true every week that I do these, is that my personal history with this stuff is repeating itself. I started out with this whole like, oh, I want to get into there's all these comics. And one of the reasons that really appealed to me at the time was, remember, I was trying to get out of action figures because I thought that was too kiddie, and I wanted like a more quote-unquote adult or older, more sophisticated hobby. And comic books was one of the things that I latched onto. It was the thing that I latched onto. But the biggest thing was, like I said, to get a G.I. Joe guy was $3, Star Wars figure was $3, a He-Man guy was $5, sometimes $6. Transformers are expensive. I mean, you're looking at close to $10 for one of their Autobots, or $15 or $12 for a Decepticon. So it was an expensive hobby, even to stay in like doing Transformers. And then Mask came out this year, and Mask stuff wasn't necessarily cheap. But the cool thing about comic books is you could buy them, and they were so cheap. I mean, what was the cover price on these at the time? I want to say it was 75 cents. Why doesn't it pull up, of course, there we go. 65. So they're still 65. I don't think they went to 75 cents until 86 or 87. So, I mean, this pocket change for one comic book. I mean, you could literally go and find, if you could probably find 6 pop bottles or 7 pop bottles, if you lived in Michigan, and get 10 cents a piece, and there you go. You got enough for one comic book. So, you know, your mom, your dad bought a 12-pack of pop, you know, cans, or, you know, we had glass bottles back then, 8-pack of glass bottles. You know, we'd go into the kitchen. My mom drank Tab and Diet Coke like it was going out of style, and my dad was getting, you know, drank a lot of Faygo at my dad's. But anyways, he was getting pop and Coke and Mountain Dew and all that stuff. And so, you know, there was stacks of, like, go out in the garage or go out in the back patio at my mom's or in the kitchen behind the table. There was literally like probably $3 or $4 in pop bottles just sitting there. And I'd always say, Mom, and my mom would, I'm going to take him to the grocery store next time to the grocery store, which she never did. Once in a while she did. But I would say, hey, if I get rid of the bottles, can I keep the money? Sure, so it's your job to get rid of all the bottles and go take them back. So what I would do was how did I did this? Like I said, I was a pretty resourceful kid at this time. I was mowing lawns and everything. I remember taking them to the AMP because you could skate through the what do you call it? The Rochester Park to go to the AMP, which is the old grocery store there. But I think I used to take them. I didn't have a wagon or anything. I can't remember how I used to take them. I might even took them on my skateboard. I didn't have the skateboard yet at this time. I can't remember. I think I might just put them in bags or whatever. But I would take these bottles back, and I would get, you know, $3 or $4, and that was enough to buy my comic books for the week. So it was a cheap. I mean, I didn't even have to break into my lawn mowing money or my snow shoveling money. I mean, this was like it was a cheap hobby to get into. It was just fun. Like I said, I loved the art. You know, it pushed all my buttons, and you know, you didn't have you know, like today. I mean, a comic book's $5. You know, in order to get $5, because you still get 10 cents a pop bottle, you would literally have to take back like 5 12-packs of cans of pop bottles. There's a lot of pop bottles to get one comic book. That's just crazy. But yeah, this hobby was cheap back then, and I was all about. It was, for me, it was part of the ritual too, of taking back pop bottles, looking for change in the cushions of the couch, you know, that type of thing. Saving all the change that people have, mowing lawns, doing shoveling snow, and saving all this money up, and then you know, going up with, you know, some cash in my pocket and riding my bike or walking or skateboard, whatever, going up to the store on like a specific day that was designated. This was in the summer, you know, and going up there and then buying the comic books and then walking over to Perry Drugstore and getting my candy bar and my pop, you know, and walking home and then sitting on a porch, because we had no air conditioning in that house apartment we had, so I'd sit on the porch, you know, with a pillow behind me. You know, we had this bench, like this milk. For some reason, my mom, a lot of women loved their milk cans or whatever. It was like a decorative thing. And I would get one of the big pillows, and I would sit it behind me, you know, in this bench, and I would sit there and I'd lay on the bench, the hard bench of the porch, with these comic books and flip through them and read them, and you know, then I'd put them in the shoebox, and that was part of the rituals, is, you know, saving them, and then upgrading to a banker's box, and then finally upgrading to getting a bag of 100 bags, and then finally getting a comic box for the first time. It was just a thing. It was fun, and it gave you something to look forward to, and it kind of gave you a purpose. It was like, to me, that in and of itself was more fun to me and more enriching and more taught me more about how to make money and how to manage your money and how to do that stuff than just going to school. Because to go to school, it's like I'm going to learn a bunch of junk that I don't want to learn, right? So I would rather, by doing this process, you know, and it just seemed like it was, you know, it was more, I learned more about that, which is by and large what I do nowadays. I mean, I try to get money to afford a place by doing stuff that's comic book related. I still go to a comic book shop. I still put the stuff away in bags. I mean, it's kind of a thing. As much as I always tried to get out of it, and of course during the 90s, the speculator bubble, when I got out of comic books, and then I ended up coming back in, and despite whether or not people like modern day comics and stuff, it's more of just a lifestyle hobby thing that you just do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but throw a comment in there if you have some similar philosophy about it as well. But so that's it for the week, and we're gonna come in just 10 minutes under an hour, as long as I stop talking here in the next couple of minutes, or at least in the next few seconds. I'll catch you on the next video. We'll go through. I said I'm gonna go through and read the comics. But again, I guess, sorry, my final closing thing was that the comic books I liked on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis is starting to dwindle down to, like I said, a handful. If you were to take away all the subscriptions once they all ran out, I only just kept collecting G.I. Joe and sometimes Transformers. But if you're just talking about the Marvel Universe stuff, I mean, we're down to like a handful of comic books a month. Like I said, Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny X-Men, maybe a New Mutants here and there, maybe an Avengers here and there, maybe a Fantastic Four here and there, and then maybe a West Coast Avengers. I mean, that's about it. I mean, it's kind of like the end of what I was collecting at the time. Limited series would come out here and there, but it was like I said, let's just say it's 5 comic books. Let's just say they're $1 a piece, which they weren't at the time. It's a $5 a week, $5 a month habit that you could basically get by just taking some pop bottles back, or maybe I could do a lawn and still have money left over for a few pops of my own and the candy bars. So again, I like that. In summertime, it's very nostalgic for that time period, even with all the crap that was going on, which I won't get into, but it's a lot of family drama at the time. But anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next one, and remember, like, subscribe, do all that business. I don't beg you to do all that at a time. Do it if you want to. I'm going to keep making these until I get bored of them, so that's what it is. Alright, talk to you later. Bye-bye.